is piled up like the leaves. No guarantees. Can we just enjoy the breeze? I beg of you, please not today. I'm still recovering from summer's blaze. I feel it in the ether. I feel it in the air. I see it in the color, faded and clear. Maybe it's too hard, maybe it's too far. I feel it in the ether, and I feel it in the air. I feel it in your eyes, I see through your disguise. I know you feel it too, and I know you see it too. I'm fighting through my drip drives, and I'm fighting through the tick-tock. Could this be just a breeze? Can't believe it just seems too good to be. I feel it in the ether, I feel it in the air. I see it in the color, faded and clear. Maybe it's too hard, maybe it's too far. I feel it in the ether, and I feel it in the air. Drip, drop, take that boom. Drip, drop, take that boom. Drip, drop, take that boom. Drip, drop, take that boom.
Good evening, everyone. Excuse me. It is, what's wrong with my voice tonight? Okay, here we go. Good evening, everyone. It is Friday night. Man, I'm tripping. It is Sunday evening. It's 10 p.m. and it's time for another episode of the Thinking Principle Podcast. Tonight, I'm going to be talking directly to my fellow educators, teachers, teacher leaders, aspiring leaders, school building leaders, APs, principals, and maybe superintendents. Either way,
when they see
let's
me,
start.
they know that every day when I'm breathing, it's for us to go farther. You know, every time I speak, I want the truth to come out. You know what I'm saying? Every time I speak, I want to shiver. You know, I don't want them to be like, they know what I'm going to say because it's polite. They know what I'm going to say. And even if I get in trouble, you know what I'm saying? That what we're supposed to do? I'm not saying I'm going to rule the world or I'm going to change the world, but I guarantee that I will spark the brain that will change the world. And that's our job, is to spark somebody else watching us. We might not be the ones, but let's not be selfish, and because we're not going to change the world, let's not talk about how we should change it. I don't know how to change it, but I know if I keep talking about how dirty it is out here, somebody going to clean it up.
And now he's been promoted. His job, principal.
Good evening, everyone. This is Uche Joku, Sneaker Principal. Welcome to this space. You know, I'm always trying to find the words in my head to really make meaning of what I'm doing with this whole podcast and content creation space. Guys, don't forget, I spent the better part of my adult life as a school building educator, whether I was a special education teacher, whether I was a dean, which I was for a number of years, then assistant principal, then eventually a principal, you know, and then all the facets of the role that I've played over the years, it's interesting because now I'm not physically in that space anymore, even though in my heart I am. But then the new thing now is I'm in a space where I'm asking myself, what is it that I'm doing? Like what is my purpose? Like what is it that I'm doing, as far as what am I contributing, in my new capacity. So it's interesting right now because I know that I really want to keep pouring into educators. I want to pour into my students or students in general and their parents. And there's all these things I want to do. So I'm just going to do it all and figure myself out through the process, if that makes any sense. This evening, one second here to make sure I can see all my systems. Okay, so this evening, like I said earlier, I'm really going to pour into teachers. I'm going to pour into teachers this evening, my fellow educators. And how am I going to do that? So I'll tell you how I'm going to do that. One of the things that I've gotten a lot from colleagues and even people I don't even know who are in education, they've come to me via Twitter, via LinkedIn, even references. People say, hey, this, Uche, can you link him up with me? But I have some questions for him. And all these questions all come down to a very interesting space, which I think it needs to be poured into. As educators, the expectation is that what we do is we are solely focused on our students, which is true. That is how we're built. It's in our DNA. Any educator who's worth their salt is focused on their students. That's all you care about. Their successes, their pains, their joys, their families. How many of you have gone to the point, if you're an educator and you're listening this evening, how many of you got to the point where you literally have committed so much more of you to them than your own families and than your own self? And listen, my first 2 years in education, I'm talking about brand new in education. If I told you how much money I spent on my students, I know I'm not talking about buying them lunch. My second year I was a track coach. And literally I had students who didn't have track cleats, like literally didn't have cleats to run their sprinting events. But at the same time, their parents couldn't afford it. And I knew this. So I was like, okay, before I have my students who are committing and practicing, I had this one kid who used to come to practice and literally run in Chuck Taylors. Chuck, Chucks, the old school, back in the day when basketball first started, those that are now more stylistic than they are functional. This is what this kid had on his feet. And he would come to practice and he would sprint and run his heart off in Chuck Taylors. They would go into a track meet and all of a sudden I'm like, he can't show up there on a track with Chuck Taylors. And mind you, at this time in my career, I was making $39,000 a year. I was a first year, I'm sorry, like 42. I was a second year teacher. So I was taking money out of my paycheck, which was measly at best, to go and find places I can find cleats on sale, And we were talking about some of the most mismatched, ugliest colors, whatever the case is. I didn't care. And I'll be honest with you, I was worried that my kids would care when I bought those cleats to them. The amount of thank you and appreciation I got from my students was like, wow. And that's what I did. I poured into my students, down to my own personal resources. I was poor, and I was still pouring into them. But there is a but. At some point in time, good evening, my brother Solomon. How are you doing? Blessings to you and your family as well. Thank you so much for joining me again, and I really appreciate you, brother. At some point in time, I had to learn that for me to truly be impactful, the way I wanted to be impactful in my students' lives, I had to elevate. What do I mean I had to elevate? I had to make more money. I had to move into high positions of authority and influence. I had to make sure that the decisions that were being made around my kids were not being made, in a silo, that I was part of that conversation. This is something that caused me a lot of trauma. I'll be honest with you. It caused me a lot of trauma. I'll tell you why it caused me a lot of trauma. Because teachers are not supposed to talk about money. You're a teacher. You know what you signed up for. You don't go into education to become rich. Have you heard of Cornel West? Have you heard of Dr. Henry Louis Gates? And all the very famous educators that are out there. A lot of them started their careers in the public school systems. But my thing is this: they have been able to use their success and their wealth to influence systems and pour resources into their communities. So I'm one of those people who argued with people around me, and I'll tell you this: I lost friends. I lost a lot of friends. People, some of them might be listening right now that I haven't spoken to in years, because they thought I was being so selfish and I was being so self-centered because I had my eye on becoming an administrator, and I worked in that direction. But I did that because I have made a much larger impact as a dean, as an assistant principal, and as a principal. Not to say I didn't make an impact as a teacher. I did. I made incredible impact as a teacher. But however, I wanted to do more, because I saw that once kids left my classroom, I had no real connection to them anymore. They were pretty much at the mercy of whoever they went to next. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say that every teacher is amazing, but that's not true at all. Not at all. I've worked with people that I was like, you should not be doing this. Your heart is not in this, and you're just doing this for a paycheck. And it's funny because I said, I'm here talking about, I need to make more money. I need to more positions of influence. But the money I was making, where do you think it went? It poured back into my students. My influence allowed me to get more resources into my schools. A couple years back, when I literally received $100,000 check from a organization that I applied for resources from, and they sent $100,000 check to the school. I couldn't have done that as a teacher. I had to be in the position as a principal to sit down with people with resources and power and be able to have those conversations and paint a picture about my students, my teachers, my staff, the community, the parents, the neighborhood, the bodega down the block. I had to paint that picture for them to say, you know what, man, I'm going to write a check for an arts program for your school. When I reached out to have people who are of incredible influence to come to the school and just spend some time with the kids. I had a brother, listen, guys, I'm a sneakerhead, and if you are an educator in an urban setting, you know how important sneakers are. Sneaker culture is part of the culture, right? I was in Vegas, and I was at a particular, I'm not trying to drop names, but if you're a sneakerhead and I say sneakerheads in Vegas, who is the biggest sneakerhead in Vegas? Well, I walked into his shop, and he happened to be in the shop. I walked over to him and introduced myself, and I told him how I'm a big fan of what he does in the sneaker space, and how he educates people online on how to turn their love for sneakers into an entrepreneurial endeavor. And I told him how I talked to my students about this, and my students are big fans of his. He said, you know what? I'm from the East Coast. I'm going to be back home, in a couple of months. Give me your number. Take my number. Let's stay in contact. You know how many times people say that to me? But I did that. Do you know, well, it was about 2 or 3 months later, that man was in my school, sitting in front of about 40 kids, telling his story and talking about sneakers and how it changed his life. And I saw kids sitting there in their J's and their whatever, and they were thinking, man, there's so much more to this other than looking fly. I couldn't have done that, walking into that man's shop as a teacher. Because the thing is, I had to have the power and ability to make the call of saying, yo, welcome to come to my school. And that's what I did. And he came to my school, brought gifts for the kids. And this is not a one-time thing. It's something I've done over and over again from my position of authority and my position of influence. So I say all this to say, this evening, I'm really embarking on a new space. You know, every other Sunday evening, I'm going to alternate between, you know, a branded podcast called Public School Confidential, where I'm going to be talking to parents, I'm going to be talking to students, I'm going to talk to anyone who's listening about how to better position ourselves as parents and as students and those people who are interested in making sure our schools are doing what they need to do for our kids. But then every other Sunday, like this evening, we're going to be I'm branding it actually Urban Teacher Rising, because I was an urban teacher and I rose. I rose to the occasion. I took every risk possible to put myself in a position to be of greater influence. I wanted to get outside my classroom. I'm not saying that if that's not what you want to do, there's anything wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. It's like the battlefield. We need soldiers on every different level. But my thing is this, I'm talking to the captains out there, to the lieutenants, to the officers, those who are like, yo, I think I could do more. I think I could step out of my classroom and influence more teachers and replicate what I'm doing there. I think I can do more to shift the direction that my school is going in, or my community is going in. Okay? Remember, that principal, that AP, that dean is a human being just like you, who made a decision to take on that challenge. And there's many of us out there, many of you out there who want that, but you just don't know where to start. I know this, but that was me. But if you know my story, I was kind of fortunate. I kind of got tricked into becoming a dean my first year, not realizing that would set off the course of my career. In 2005, all the way till 2022, when I decided to walk away from the school building. You know, my career has been all about influence and leveraging, you know, positional authority, intellectual authority, and those relationships that I've had with people across systems. So now, if you're listening right now and you're still here, you know, do me a favor, you know, tag this, share this, you know, shoot it to somebody that you know who's a teacher, or who's somebody who's in a administrative program, or just talking about, you know, I want to do more. You know, share this with them. Okay. I'm not asking for anything other than you sharing this information, because I'm hoping that some of the things I shared with you tonight is going to be helpful. And do me a favor as well. If you are, I'm going to have a hard time. Let me see if I'm going to be able to read comments. I'm not sure if I'm going to be, because I want to see if I'm going to be able to read comments on, I just messed up. I'm over here hitting the wrong buttons. Okay. So I'm trying to see if I can read comments. So I won't be able to, so do me a favor. If you, at any point in time, you want to leave a comment, the best you can do for me, if you do it on Facebook, I should be able to see it on Facebook. I know I will see it on Facebook. But if you're going to leave comments and you are, let's say, for example, on Twitter, I won't be able to see it. It's just my system is not set up for me to be able to see it cross-functioning like that. Not yet. I need to figure out how to make that happen. But on YouTube, if you go on YouTube, you know, and you can definitely leave comments. I'll be able to see it. The other thing too I'm going to do is this. I will open the call line. So if at any point in time, if you're like, listen, I have a question, feel free to call in. I will pick up and you can ask your question to me live. Again, you don't have to be on camera. So I will do that as well. But yeah, if you want to leave me a comment, Facebook and YouTube are going to be the best places to hit me up on. And on Twitter, you can. I mean, Twitter, you can. The other spaces, listen, I'm a one-man show, so I got to kind of like organize myself and be able to pay attention while I'm still talking at the same time. So I'm just putting it out there like that. So now, there's about 43 minutes left, so I'm going to try to be as organized as possible. Listen, I out of mad love for y'all who are listening, I pulled out my special white journal from the Com Fellows, and I pulled out my Mont Blanc pen because I'm the kind of person, and I used to do this as a teacher all the time. I'd be teaching and writing notes. Just the way my brain works. I am 100% dyslexic, and I had to learn many years ago on how to wire my brain so I can keep track of my thoughts. So please, be patient with me. All right. So, first off, you have to be courageous. But not only courageous, you have to also not give two turds about what anyone thinks about your ambition to elevate in the profession. Okay, first thing, if you're worried about what anyone's going to think about you're wanting to become an assistant principal, or to become the dean, or to become a principal, then you're not going to have a very productive career. You have to have a tough skin if you want to elevate in the profession of education. And I mean, for those of you who are like, you know what, I want to step into a leadership role. You have to have a tough skin, because there's always going to be somebody who has something to say. Ask any principal. I'll tell you right now, ask any principal. That in my whole entire career, I can tell you this right now with full confidence, I've never screwed anybody over. I have had to coach some people out of the profession because they didn't belong in the profession, and they were doing more harm to themselves than they were doing good. And if you're doing harm to yourself as a teacher, then you're definitely doing harm to the kids in the classroom. And I've had those people I've had to coach out of the profession, and every single person I ever coached out of the profession, for some weird reason, by God's grace, we crossed paths again, and they always thanked me and say, you know what, you were right. I just didn't see it then. Okay? But then, can you imagine the stuff that I would have to go through, or any leader would have to go through? Oh, he is this, he's that, he's racist, he's trying to do this, he's an egomaniac. And the whole entire time, they're not understanding. I'm a teacher at my core. I'm a teacher who elevated into the role of leadership. But at my core, I was always a teacher. And as a teacher, who is at the center of my worries and my thoughts? My students. Every student in the building. So if I allowed what people have to say about me, or people questioning my ambition, I wouldn't have done what I've done, and I wouldn't have been able to impact as many communities that I'm now willing to accept that I did do. Listen, for a long time, I used to be like, no, that's not me. That's the whole. I did a lot of things over the course of my career, and I've had the past couple of months to sit down and reflect and write and think about, like, man, what did I do over the course of 18 years? And for a while, I've been saying 17. It's actually 18, because I spent a year as an intern working at Carson High School in California. And it's funny because I totally forgot about that, because I did that while I was still in college. Then after college, I went into corporate America, totally forgetting about the year that I spent and what I learned there about, what makes a kid tick, what about the dynamics and relationships that teachers have with students, and administrators have with teachers, and parents have with teachers and students and everybody else. I learned all that in that 1 year because I paid attention. I was a social work intern, so I was paying attention to what was happening around me. So over the course of my 18 years, I had to learn. I do not worry about what another man or woman has to say about my decision to move into leadership. But the other thing too now is so that's step one, do not worry. I'm gonna write that down. Don't worry. What did I say earlier? Give two turds. Two turds. Okay? Then the next thing now is this. You have to be fearless. I think you have to be fearless. What I mean by fearless is this. The number of people that I've had work for me in my schools who literally I had to ask them, so what's your plans for your future, for your career? What is it that you want to do? and they telling me, yeah, you know what, I really like the classroom and I'm really comfortable in the classroom. I'm looking at them, I'm like, nah, man, you want more. I can tell you want more, but you're scared to ask for more. You know, one of the things I can tell you is this: when the dean situation fell into my lap, I won't lie, they fell into my lap, and I was trying to figure out teaching and being a dean at the same time. But when the time came, and my third year, things went left. I had a new principal at my first school, so the person who hired me decided to depart at the end of my second year at that school. New person came in. We were like water and oil, right? Nothing disrespectful at all. It's just that we didn't mix, and I just knew I was going to be able to work for him. Good evening, Brother Davis. Great to have you here. So I knew that me and this person were not going to mix. You know, he started making comments about, you didn't have enough time teaching, so I don't know if you're going to be the dean anymore, and all this stuff. And I already knew that he had plans for me that were not the plans I had for myself. So I left there and I went to another school. And that school that I went to was someone that I met my first year, and this person would end up becoming my mentor principal. You know, he became my mentor principal. But the first time I met him, he said to me, listen, and this is before I even started working, before my first day on the job, maybe a week or two, he said to me, listen, I don't know, I have a feeling about you. Listen, if you ever need a job, reach out to me. I'll hire you in a heartbeat. I'm like, bro, we just had a 10-minute conversation. No, we had like a 5-minute conversation while I was trying to help one of my friends who was going to start teaching in his school set up her classroom. And he was offering me a job. So when things went left for me at my school, I reached out to her and she reached out to him. And the next day we were on the phone. He said, come on. And mind you, I hadn't spoken to him or even laid eyes on him since the first time I saw him in 2005. This was 2007. Okay. And it was funny because most people would get nervous about making that call and stay where they're at and say, well, I hope it all works out because, I'm comfortable here. I was like, absolutely not. I did not spend 2 years breaking my back, setting up systems, and doing it as a first year teacher, systems that didn't exist. And then to be told that I'm being pushed out. So I was like, nah. So when I reached out to him, I had to be courageous in that space. And then when I went to go work for him as dean, I was always pushing the envelope. Hey, can I do this? Can I do that? Can I do this? And in my head, it hadn't formed in my head that I was thinking really about becoming an administrator. In New York City, being a dean is not an administrator. It's just a teacher leader role. So to be an administrator, you have to have a license. But the thing was, I was paying attention to him. The school had 3 APs. I was watching them. And then he also had like a administrative internship program that ran through his school, through the Leadership Academy. I was watching all these people and I was like, wait a minute. I can do what they do. I just now have to make sure, I just have to go through the steps of getting the license and everything else. And I mentioned it to him. Okay, kind of cocky. Here I am as a third year educator, talking about like, I might want to be an assistant principal. And he listened. I don't even know if he even remembered, but he listened. He said, "Okay, let's see what we can do about that." And I kept on. And it's funny because one thing I learned from my uncle, God rest his soul. He's always tell me, act as if you're already in the role. He's like, if you want to be president, it doesn't matter if you're sweeping. He said it doesn't matter if you're sweeping the road. If you want to be president, start acting like the president. Be presidential as you're sweeping the road. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to be president. I'm going to be presidential. I'm going to be administrative in how I did things. Do I dress? Do I carry myself? My level of confidence that I had to exude, even when I didn't feel confident, right? And what happened after that third year, with my first year with him, which is my third year in education now, he got promoted and became an executive principal. A program done through the mayor and the chancellor at the time, Chancellor Klein. He became an executive principal. So I was like, damn, I came over here to work for this dude and he's dipping. But then he calls me and says, hey, you're coming with me. I was like, I'm coming with you. But as an executive principal, you're going to be turning around schools. They're going to give you a school because of your expertise to turn around a school. I'm a 30-year educator, and this is about our first year working together. He said, come on. Okay. Now think about the confidence, he had in me to have me say, for him to say, come, let's go be part of the, turn around this school around. That's a third year in the system. Brother David says all young people need mentors. 5-year goal. I'm telling you, essential. And I'm saying this to you. If you're listening to this right now, you're a teacher. You need mentors. Again, I went to my second school because I saw somebody that I was like, you know what, I could work for this person. And I said he became my mentor principal. Okay, it's funny you said 5-year goal. So check this out. So 5-year goal. That's gosh, remember that 5 years, right? So this is year 3. So year 4, I'm with him, in his new school. He becomes a Con Fellow, which is a program through Columbia University that recognizes the top principals in New York City, and now it recognizes the top principals in the country. And he got into that program. So he's an executive principal. He's a Con Fellow, and as a Con Fellow, he has to pick an ally, someone he's going to mentor that he believes could become a principal. There were a lot of people he could have picked from. Assistant principals, people who had way more experience than I did, but no, he picked me. So here I am in my 4th year. I'm part of a turnaround team at a school. I'm now a dean at my 3rd school. I am also a Con ally in this very prestigious fellowship because I put it out there that this is what I'm thinking I want to do. He said, come on, let's go. Okay, that's year 4. Now, let me tell you how crazy it is. Now we're coming to year 5, but the fellowship is a 1-year program. As the fellowship was ending, we did an action research project. We presented at Columbia University. And I'm like, yo, how did I go from being, somebody who's just trying, to figure his life out, and by my 4th year, I'm presenting at Columbia University, with the Con Fellow. I'm the Con ally, presented. Guess what happened the following year? The following year, I was at Columbia University as a graduate student. That program springboarded me because, again, the professors and the staff for the fellowship were the same people who were running the graduate program in educational leadership. 5 years later, I'm at Columbia University with arguably some of the best minds in the country. Listen, I graduated from undergrad with a 2.71 GPA, okay? I went through my ups and downs, to go from there, and then an immigrant kid from Nigeria, a kid who grew up in South Central LA and Inglewood, California, to now be at Columbia University, speaking about equity and speaking about, on how to increase student learning and engagement in classrooms, and I'm thinking to myself, how did this happen? I was a dean 5 seconds ago, and here I am presenting in front of doctors, PhDs, lettered and authors, right? And then my 5th year, I'm in a graduate program. My 6th year, my 5th year, I'm in a graduate program, and then at that point in time, I became an administrative intern. So I was doing my internship my 5th year. My 6th year, I was an assistant principal. Check that out. 5th year, 6th year, I'm assistant principal. And I remember, so check this out. I came into education in 2005, and I got my letter of nomination to be an assistant principal in 2011, 6 years. I had to be bold. At each moment in time, from changing schools, and then accepting to move with him to this other school, to do this other program, then to get into the graduate program. Each time, I didn't feel worthy. But I wasn't going to tell anybody that. The only people who knew that was my mother and my brother. And I was like, yo, how did this happen? But when I was out there, listen, I put my big boy pants on and I was moving and rocking, and sometimes I had to fake it. But I knew what I wanted. I had a sense that for me to have the greatest impact, I had to be in that position. I'll tell you this right now. Being in the Con Fellowship program, I got to see the best principals in New York City. How they moved, how they talked, how they thought. And I was like, man, you got flesh just like me. You have thoughts just like me. You have doubts just like me. So imagine my confidence is shot out the roof, right? So I'm saying again, you have to be bold. You have to be confident, in pursuing what you want and letting it be known. All right? But now, yes, you can't worry about what people are going to say about your ambition. You have to be confident about what you want. The third thing I'm going to tell you right now is this. Okay. Back then, I didn't have the word for it, but today I have the word for it. Okay. Back then, I didn't have the word to describe this thing I'm about to tell you, but now the word exists and it's used often, but it's not used in education. That word is branding. What is your brand? What sets you apart from everybody else? What is your educational philosophy? That is your brand. When you walk into the room, what is it about you that sets you apart from everybody else? It is very important that you know what that is. If you don't know, you best have to establish it. Early on, my brand was culture. I brought into education as a dean who was a first-year dean who had no experience even as a classroom teacher. And I had to learn all those things on the job. I'm gonna tell you what my brand was, and I didn't realize it then. I was a black kid. Actually, I wasn't a kid. I was like 28 when I came into education. I was a young man coming from LA who went to schools in gang-infested neighborhoods, who knew how to move in the streets, who understood like this is what the hood is, and these are the rules, and I used them very carefully to make sure that I was one of those young men who saw 18. When I was in high school, people would talk all the time. If you saw 18, man, beautiful. I've gotten to see 46. So the hood, gang culture, my military background, my time in corporate America that taught me how to blend into spaces and kind of take on the whole the spook who sat by the door. Those of you who know the reference I'm making. I got very good in being able to blend these things. So when I walked into a space, there was a level of positional authority that I had, not positional, but just social authority that I had when I walked in that helped me be successful as a dean. But then I harnessed that as I went to the Con Fellows, and I was like, oh, wait a minute, I got to move differently now, because now I'm sitting with my professors who literally wrote the books that I learned this whole teaching game from. So I had to learn how to speak their language and be confident and talk to them in their face and be willing to tell. Listen, I remember one time I had to tell a principal, I had to tell a professor, I don't agree with you on that. He was talking about something about social emotional, whatever, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, I don't quite agree with you on that, because I'm going to give you some examples of what I've seen as a student growing up in urban setting, as an educator in those spaces. And these are the things that often people who write about our children don't see, because you don't know what hunger is. You don't know what poverty is. You might write about violence because you're seeing it in the news, but you don't know the underlying current that is feeding these things. And I'm sitting there telling this professor like how their whole entire premise was wrong at Columbia University, and the whole room was quiet. And I was like, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I have to speak with my own level of confidence if I have any hope of reaching the highest levels of leadership in a school building, right? So that was part of my branding, the way I spoke, the way I carried myself, right? And then when I became an assistant principal, I lost it all. I'll tell you what happened, why I lost it all. I had an edge to me as a dean. Because my job as a dean, my job was to make sure I was handling behavior and the issues that happen in the school and dealing with problems, dealing with parents who wanted to come to school and fight me. And I was able to turn those negative situations to positive. I mean, listen, I had parents who were like, yo, I don't want him to talk to my son. You know, I don't like him. Listen, I've been called all kinds of stuff under the sun because I was very strict and I was not playing. Okay. So, but also I could say that there's not a single parent who in time didn't become a big fan of mine, but they saw eventually what I was trying to do. Because that kid who was giving problems and was fighting everything else, you know, eventually became, you know, one of my kids, you know. So they saw that, they appreciated that. So that required that I was moving in a certain way that balanced my professionalism with the streets, so I could communicate and get my point across, right? When I became an assistant principal, and all of a sudden I had my office. I had an office, and then I was finding myself in spaces where I really believed I had to become, you know, a little bit more proper. My tie had to be straighter. My wingtips had to be shinier. You know, I was wearing suits every day now. And I'll tell you what happened. I gave up unknowingly my superpower, my brand. The thing when people saw me, they were like, yo, I like the way he moves. That's who that person is. That's Uche, that's Mr. Njoku. I didn't have that. So fortunately, I had God on my side. That's the only way I can say it. Because at the right time, I had certain people who came into my life. And one of them, you know, if he's listening right now, and he knows exactly who he is, you know, we connected over sneakers. And back at this point in time, I'm rocking my brogues. I had my monk straps, my Oxfords, you know, my cap toe, you know, dress shoes, and I was also slipping and sliding in them hallways. Whenever there was a fight, I had to go run to that fight. Man, you know how many times I busted my ass because there's no attraction in dress shoes. Then eventually I elevated to like Core Hans with the whole sneaker look, you know, with the whole Nike technology on there. But still, I wasn't me. I wasn't comfortable. So one day, you know, I always talk about sneakers. I bought me a pair. I can tell you what pair I bought. It was Jordan 11s, the Gammas. Okay, I love those. Okay, with the patent leather. It's black and black on that kind of like weird off bluish green. I threw those on with some khakis, my shirt and tie, you know, and I was like, you know, I had a jacket on, but I had the sneakers on. And all of a sudden, I was back. That dude from LA was back. And then what happened with the sneakers was that the sneakers became a little bit of an addiction for me. I was buying sneakers all the time, but what ended up happening, those sneakers became the point of connection with me and my students, you know. And then not only that, it gave me some serious street cred. But everybody was like, yo, that dude right there, feet stay fly. And I'm not saying anyone should do this, but it's very, very expensive. But for me, it became a brand. And I had one of my vendors who was also a sneakerhead. And one day he texted me. It was early morning. He shot me a text, random. This dude never hits me up in the morning like that. He shot me a text. He's like, hey, I was thinking about you. Sneaker principal. I don't know what you're going to do with that, but you should take that and run with it. I was like, what is he talking about? 100% legitimately, that's how the whole concept of sneaker principal came up. And I took that, I played with it. I was like, what is this? And I shelved it, but eventually it became the moniker. You know, my Twitter account became Sneaker Principal. I'll go places, you know, and people knew the nickname Sneaker Principal, so they always look at my feet, what's on my feet. And for some reason, the sneakers gave me permission to be a black male who's about the culture. I'm blending that with my career as a school leader. And I could tell you something. I'll tell you something. This is when I knew that it had gone out of hand. not in a good way. I was at an event for the Con Fellows 2 years ago? About 2 years ago. Yeah, 2 years ago. And I should preface this. So that program, that Con Fellows, where I was a Con ally, eventually I became a Con Fellow. Okay? So just to tell you the culmination of that whole journey, I became a Con Fellow, recognized as one of the best principals in America. I was at an event, a Con Fellow event. There was all the alumni were there and everything else. And who walks in? Our chancellor. You know, not Chancellor Banks, but Chancellor Ross Porter. You know, the first African American woman to hold the post of Chancellor of New York City Schools. She walks in, and I've known her over the years. When I was a dean, she was a principal in a building across the street from my school. We ran summer school in her building, so I knew her from that space. We weren't like terribly close, but she knew who I was. I mean, of course, I knew who she was. She was a principal. And then when I became a principal, she was the executive superintendent for the Bronx. So again, I was one of her principals, right? So here I am at this function. She walks in, of course, like any person of authority and power who walks into a room with their entourage, everybody's like, oh, the chancellor's here. So I'm standing there watching, and everybody's like going up to her, shaking her hands, saying hello, hugs and kisses. And we locked eyes. I was like, oh snap, what did I do? You know, because I'm like, when your parents look at you and you're like, oh, what did I do? That was me. Like, I'm like, what did I do? And what ended up happening was she made a beeline to me. And she came to me, she grabbed me by the arm, she says, sneaker principal. And I was like, the leader of the biggest school system in America, the chancellor of New York City Schools, didn't say Uche, didn't say Njoku, said the sneaker principal. Branding. I've been places where literally, I was in Denver a couple weeks ago and met some educators from Houston. I was in Houston? No, from Dallas. I one of them said, you look familiar. You're that sneaker principal. And I was like, yo, this is crazy, right? Branding is very, very important. I'm not saying that you have to go out there and come up with a nickname and things like that. But remember, what you do should always arrive before you get there. People should know you for what you do, whether it is because of a program that you run and the way you run it. It should be about the way you speak, the way you care for your community, what you do. Like, what are the things that are uniquely you? It might just be the way you speak, the clarity of your thought, your courage. Like, find that thing. Or it might be, you gotta listen, one of my dudes in Detroit, he's the bow tie principal, And for a while I felt like I was competing with him with the bow tie, but I have a crazy bow tie collection. But he beat me. That dude has like antique bow ties. But that started off as a principal. Now he's the department chair at a university training principals. Okay? That brand is very, very important because guess what? It gives you that name recognition, right? So branding. So that was number 3. So then I'm gonna go to the comments real quick. I see something here. I just want to make sure I don't miss. Doom Kid 1331 says, how can I get on the path of becoming a school counselor? I recently secured my bachelor's in sociology with a law minor. So great question. I'll tell you this. You want to be a school counselor? You have your bachelor's degree. I can only speak for New York City. I can't speak for anywhere else. Every state, every locality has different rules. But I'll tell you this: here in New York City, you have to have your master's degree. I'm almost 100% certain you have to have your master's degree, right? So that means a little bit more school to get that master's degree and then get your licensing. But one thing I would say is this: not everybody's going to agree with me, but I'll tell you this. If where you are requires that you have a graduate degree, a master's degree for your licensing, then of course you're gonna have to do that, right? But the other thing you should do is, if you're able to, teach, spend some time in the classroom, just a little bit of time. Understand that space. Understand the psychology, the sociology of the classroom, the kids, the teachers, all these spaces. Because as a school counselor, if you're really worth your salt, you're spending time really unpacking, supporting kids, right? But if all you know is what's in the textbook, and you're just a theorist, and you don't have practical experience of what they're going through in the classroom. Because if you understand what's going on in the classroom, you understand what's happening in the kid's life. You understand what's going on at home. Because I'll tell you this right now. I tell people all the time. When I was a teacher, I was a counselor. I was a psychologist. I was everything. Because the kid in my classroom, it was all about them, and because it was all about them, I knew what was going on with their families. I knew those who were in shelters. I knew those who were going through whose family member went to prison and what they were going through. Like literally, it got to the point where during my lunch times as a teacher, there were days where all my kids would go get their lunch and come back to the classroom. I would just sit down and chop it up, because my role was not just their teacher. I was their mentor. I was their older brother. I was a father figure. Sometimes I had to tap into my inner feminine, and I was a mother too. So that's one thing I would say. Find, if you're able to, I highly suggest, even if you're just substitute teaching, understand that classroom dynamic. Because it's not just teaching. It's not just ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. It's so much more happening in there that's very important. I would not be as successful as I am, or as I was, as I am. Let me not pass that into my career. If it wasn't for the fact I was forced to really dig deep to understand how to teach, because it taught me who my students were and how to really help them. So as a dean, I knew how to support them. As an assistant principal, I knew how to support them. As a principal, I knew how to support them because I was tapped into my time with them at the small denominator, which was the classroom. So hopefully that helps you, Doom Kid 1331, and good luck with that. And listen, if that could be helpful, please let me know. You could catch me. Listen, you can find me in Twitter. Just look for this. Just type in Sneaker Principal. You'll find me. And I will definitely do my best to support you in your journey. So Curtis Davis says, yes, Sneaker Principal branding, connecting with the youth. Yeah, it was complete by accident. It wasn't something I intended. It's just something that happened, And then, yes, practical experience. And I'm assuming you're talking about Doom Kid. Yeah. Listen. I'll say this to everyone. If you're going to do anything in a school building, especially if you're going to be a teacher or a counselor or anything like that, I can't emphasize how important it is to spend even a season in the classroom. Understand that space. If you understand the classroom, there's so much more you're going to understand beyond that. That's going to really support you in your whatever your virtual role is. Wait a minute. Okay, I'm not gonna ask you to tell me what your name is. Doom Kid 1331. You said you were part of Becca's first graduating class. So I know you. I can't. Your picture's upside down. It's like your chin and your shoulder. So, ladies and gentlemen, so this is one of the, my third school, the turnaround school that I told you about earlier in this episode, where myself and the principal went to go, he became an executive principal. We went to was Becca, which is Bronx Early College Academy. One of the best years of my career as an educator, because that's where I became an assistant principal, and that's where I was groomed to become a principal right at that school. And that was the school I was there. I was at that school the longest of all my schools that I was at. Incredible. And that first graduating class has a special place in my heart until the day I die. Becca, listen, I cried on stage at their graduation. Crazy. And I'm not a crier, but I boo-hooed like a little baby on stage at that graduation. So, yo, Doom Kid, hit me up privately and let me know who you are, so we could reconnect. And I'm proud of you. But listen, this is what it's about. He said, listen, where is it? He got his bachelor's degree in sociology with a minor in law. He graduated. Becca is not in Beverly Hills. Becca is not in the wealthier parts of New York City. It's a school in the South Bronx, walking distance from Yankee Stadium. The neighborhood where the school is housed in, when we first arrived there, we were told that neighborhood was called Little Vietnam. Not because there were Vietnamese people there, but it's all the crazy stuff that was happening there. It was like a war zone. But we still graduated kids who went to college, who have graduate degrees, who went to law school, who are pharmacists, who are doing incredible work. They're adults now, doing incredible work. For me, that takes me back to what I said in the beginning of this conversation. The work I was doing as a classroom teacher, I felt like it was only impacting those kids. I was a special ed teacher, so it was impacting my 12 kids, my 13 kids. When I became an administrator, when I became a dean, now I was impacting the whole entire school. In some cases, I was impacting the whole entire building. But in New York City, most schools are co-located. You have multiple schools in the building. But my presence, I knew I was impacting even other kids in the building who knew who I was, even though I might not have been their assistant principal or their principal. That's the thing about elevating yourself is very, very important in education. Because I'm going to say, if all you want to do is be in a classroom and teach, there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing at all. Nothing at all. But the thing is, if you want more, then I'm just going to stop with these three things. Don't worry about what people are going to say about you and your ambitions. Be confident in stating what you want and making sure that the people that can help you, even if they can't help you, people know this is what you want, because eventually it's going to get to the right ear, But you can't be willy-nilly about it. You got to be very clear in what you're pursuing, and also know it's not a straight path. I just told you a story about my development, and the part of that you don't know, unless you've listened to my other content, is that I got rejected over and over and over again through that journey. The easiest part, honestly, for me was becoming assistant principal. After that was just like staccato. It was like left, right, up, and down until I got to where I got to. But I never gave up. I stayed confident. I didn't worry about what anybody said about me. Even when people were like, "Oh, see, he's not even getting the position," he thought he was going to get that. And they were murmuring behind me until I did. And they got to see my impact and my influence on my school communities, especially when they doubted that I would even ever get the opportunity to lead. Then, of course, your branding. How are you moving? And these three things are just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more, but we're going to stop with these three right here. Let me go back to the comments real quick. Actually, let me go back up here. So listen, Doom Kid, I'm going to put my my email in the chat, because I'm super curious. So it's ask@sneakerprinciple.com. So please shoot me an email. I really appreciate that, because I definitely want to link up with you and first of all know who you are, and then listen, you're Becca, your family. So whatever I can do to support you is always going to be the order of the day. And again, here is Curtis giving you some love. Congrats on your journey, just beginning. Listen, this young man right here might end up being chancellor of New York City schools. You don't know. But the thing is, you just got to keep your eyes on the prize and move forward. Don't forget, Chancellor Banks was a school safety agent. The Chancellor of New York City Schools, the head of New York City Schools, the largest school system in America, started his career in education as a school safety agent. Making sure kids are coming to the building safe. And now he runs all the New York City schools. Look at that. So Doom Kid, he thanks Mr. Davis, and It says here, it's all about networking. I've been trying to get back in contact with my mentor. Listen, always be always be networking. Always be networking. And always remember this. The one thing that's beautiful about mentors is that you never know. Like, listen, I have multiple mentors, okay? The goal in your career, if you're listening to me right now, and you're an educator, or you're in any field, and you're getting something out of this conversation this evening, your mentor should be mentors. S. I have mentors in different fields, sometimes unrelated fields, until, I look back and connect the dots like Steve Jobs says, and I'm realizing, oh, snap. What I thought was unrelated was related. So you always want to make sure that you are connecting, you're learning from people, you're always out there, as much time as you're out there partying, having a good time, also spend as much time out there connecting with people, learning from people, building your network. It's one of the reasons I started this podcast, to build my network, to get my voice out there. I'll tell you right now, even doing this right here is an act of extreme courage, because sometimes I might say something that makes no sense whatsoever. Sometimes I go live and there's nobody there, period. It's straight crickets, like literally crickets. But I keep doing this. I started this podcast during the pandemic. In April, in the month of April, after school shut down in 2020. I was on my laptop just, recording videos and posting. And since then, I've had Chancellor Banks on here. I just had the CEO of Urban Assembly Schools on the podcast this past Friday, and I have some other people I'm trying to get on here. I'm over here sweating. I have some other people here I'm trying to get on here, But again, being courageous. Now listen, there are people out there who are telling me the podcast, don't do this. Like, why are you doing that? They're gonna shut you down. The deal is they're gonna let you have a podcast. Okay. I had a podcast while I was a sitting principal, interviewing people as a sitting principal. And I still have it after being a principal. And now I'm bringing people from education into my podcast, right? Stay confident and the brand, So I have 45 seconds left in this episode. I want to thank you all who were here this evening. I hope this was something that was beneficial to you. I'm going to ask you again, please, 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 share this content. It's very important to me that as many people as possible are benefiting from this space, because how do I say this? Too often, we want more, but we don't get more. And the reason we don't get more is because we are afraid. We're afraid, or sometimes it's all in our heads. There's no one for us to talk to. So we feel like, it's just something in my head that is only going to stay in my head. So why even bother? And I say, listen, you pursue it. You go after it. Whatever it is that you want, you go after it. Do not let anyone or anything stop you from reaching those spaces that you want to be in, period. So, again, thank you so much for this evening. It is 11 o'clock. I didn't take my butt to bed. I got to be up super early, 4:30 in the morning to get my workout on, so then I can go out there and do what I do. So, again, thank you. Join me back again on Wednesday night, 10 p.m. I'm back on it with my boy, my homie, my mans, Archie Tyson, for the Ivy League Hood Rats. I could never. One of these days I'm going to say that phrase without stuttering, or sounding crazy. The Ivy League Hood Rats. That's on Wednesday. It's a great time, great conversation, and let me go through this last comments before I jump off. Courage Davis says, fail forward, break things fast. Yep. Courage Davis says, we have so many, let me put this on screen. We have so many tools to network in 2022, for sure. Just sent me an email, so as soon as I get off, I'm going to check the email. I'm very curious to see who you are. So thank you. And then Doomkid says, thanks in advance. I hope you can share more of the valuable knowledge you have. Listen, this is what I do now. Apart from my new role in ed tech, listen, if you want to catch me every Sunday Every Wednesday and every Friday at 10 p.m. I'm online. Okay, I go live unless I'm sick or something like that. All right, and then that's it. Let me see here, all right. So everybody, thank you so much. Have a great night. Be well. Until next time. All right.
And now he's been promoted. His job, principal.